Take us through that journey of you then kind of opening this business that you have, and what were some of the themes that were kind of going through your mind with everything you already kind of reconciled in this new arena as a businesswoman?
You know what? Okay, so I love telling the story about why I started Djanm.
Yes.
I somehow made a career out of I made a career in hospitality in New York City. So I lived in New York for almost 10 years, and I moved to New York, I think with $300 or $400 after I've paid my first and last month for this room I was renting in Washington Heights.
Oh, wow.
And I already had a job. I was a research assistant at Columbia during the day. So then I decided that because I really wanted to explore New York,
This is Columbia University.
This is Columbia University.
Oh, wow.
There was a researcher there, a doctor who worked in the mental health department. So I was her research assistant, meaning I don't know, picked up coffee, put together all the conferences, and
sure, but it sounds really amazing.
Yeah, it does. It sounds so much. Right. There's so many jobs that make it sound much better than like the things they're actually doing.
Especially when you're a research assistant at a university.
It's like, people are like, oh, wow, cool. It's like, yeah, I order a lot of coffee for people. I mean, I did other things.
And once in a while you did data input. You were putting things together, the symposium.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I also got a lot of coffee. But anyway, so I'm working there, and I think, okay, so I'm working in this windowless room, and I'm putting to data entry, a lot of things, right? And I think, I'm 21 or 22 at that time, and I think, is this it? Is this my life in New York City? There's got to be more. But how do I get to more? Because I have no idea. I just moved there because I had this gut feeling from being a child, being 13, being in the back of a car, thinking, I have to move here. I remember my heart rate was beating so fast when I was in that car, and I was like, I want to feel like this again. Like, I have to move here when I can. So that was my main thing after school, after college, right?
Amazing.
I knew no one, nothing, but I found this room on Craigslist. There's, two girls, Craigslist back in the day.
Oh my gosh. When it was borderline, still scary, but not
still
as
very
scary.
Sketchy, very sketchy. But so many people used it, right? So I moved there January 1st, 2009. Yeah. That's when I did. It was like when when my rent started. And so I'm living this life, and I think there's got to be more. I'm in this tiny triangular shaped room. I'm walking to work, which was amazing. I still thought I was living the life because I finally made it to New York. I was like, this is great.
Every American
I'm living the life.
Dream.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have my flower lady on the corner. I'm good, right? But I really wanted more. So I thought, okay, so I need to explore New York in the way that makes me uncomfortable. And that's where Finding Paola comes from, my handle.
Yeah.
So I started writing about my experience in New York before Instagram, before blogging was a thing, and when only rich white thin women could blog and make a living.
That's what I was gonna say,
you know?
Yeah, the mommy bloggers were coming into town.
Right. So I started writing about my experience, but mostly writing, not even sharing photos. Just kind of like me running in the rain barefoot in New York, which is pretty gross, but it was just like I was on a high. I was like, I live in New York City.
Living your best life, yeah.
I got a job as a server in the West Village, so that living in Washington Heights and then going to the West Village, two different worlds. The West Village, beautiful, picturesque, rich people from all over the place. Washington Heights, drug raids, the reggaeton at 4 a.m, whatever it is. It's
kind of like In the Heights, the movie, basically.
I have not seen that movie, but probably, yes.
It's really good. I mean, it paints a really amazing picture to Washington Heights on a positive level, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there are positive things everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different thing.
different conversation.
Right, but I love the two different worlds because all I had to do was get on the A, walk a few blocks, find myself in this very calm and peaceful world, that I didn't really belong in, but I was there as a server. I was and it really got me out of my comfort zone, but also out of my shell, because I had to introduce myself, take orders, run, communicate with people I never thought I would. And the more I communicated with people, the more I had to write about, and I loved it. There was this guy, Richard, who forgot me every time. He was some kind of soldier, and he always ordered the steak and a glass of wine, and we'd have a conversation. Some days he would love me, sometimes not, and I think I wrote about him too. That's how I remembered.
Oh my gosh.
So, but I again, finding Paola, finding myself lost in New York City, so putting myself in all of these uncomfortable situations.
And brave situations too.
I guess brave, right? Because it's like you're leaping all the time. And then I started meeting people who liked working with me, then who would say, oh, well, I like working with you. This new restaurant is opening. Why don't you come and work there? And that's how I kind of worked my way up in hospitality. You're telling me I talk a lot, right? So this is leading to why I started Djanm. After I worked at this hotel in Midtown, after a few promotions, my boss really liked me. I liked her too. Again, I thought there was more.
Yeah.
So I quit my job there to focus on being a creative, whatever that meant.
Okay.
And then I sat in coffee shops, stared outside, could not write anything. I just couldn't do anything. I think I was too worried about the money that I was not, the income. Again, because I worked enough to save, but then I still had rent and to live.
Right.
And nothing was coming to me until I decided to go back to work, not as this full-time thing, but as a part-time server again. So I'm starting from scratch all over, so I could have time on the side to write and to figure things out. And so I walk into one of those restaurants I've eaten in, and I said to the owner, or maybe the manager then, not the owner, I said, I know everything there's to know about hospitality, and I really like your restaurant. These are the dishes I like. I would like to work for you as a server. And she said, can you start on Monday? I couldn't start on Monday then. There was a wedding. So I knew that at least I had some income. Right. I wanted to work 3 days a week until I figured it out. And
so you're basically dictating your own schedule.
Basically, yes. I'm trying.
To this restaurant that you really loved.
Yes.
Wow.
And the uniform was blue jeans, white shirt. And I started wearing head wraps with the blue jeans and white shirt. So this is just kind of like a thing that just started, right? And while I was working, there was this man who came, and he was having dinner with a friend, and he was one of those very difficult guests. I could tell from the beginning, not looking at me directly, asking things in a very specific way. And I remembered he asked for something that was unusual, but then to be sure, I said, whatever question that was. I think he asked for a whiskey or something, ice on the side, whatever it was, I brought it for him. And then eventually, and then I think I asked him a question, which was, I guess, relevant to the situation. And he finally looked up at me and said, what's your story? And he caught me off guard because, first of all, it was a very busy afternoon. And I was like, how do I tell my story to this guy who probably doesn't care about me because he's never even looked at me to begin with, and then all of a sudden he wants to know about me? So I said something really quickly about how I moved to New York, and then I worked in hotels, and then I quit my job, and now I'm here part-time as a server, just really quickly. And then he said, okay, I'm going to cut it to the point. I want you to work for me at these 2 restaurants I'm opening, but I want you to be a manager, which was not what I wanted to do again, because I wanted to have time to think about my creative life or my creative career.
Right.
But the offer he gave me made sense, and it felt like because these 2 restaurants were in Harlem, and it seemed like I would meet so many people, and maybe he was offering me this for a reason. Maybe I had to learn more, and I needed the money, frankly. I was like pushing it, trying to live a life that only, I don't know, rich kids live or something. So, kids who could rely on their parents if they fail. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if I do fail, I can always go back home where they could send me money. No, that was not an option because I never told my parents I quit my job at that hotel when I finally got it, right? Anyway,
so you said yes to this
I said
opportunity.
yes. I said yes, and I started working there.
It's almost like you're saying yes to the breadcrumbs.
I'm just like, you know what? Sure. I'm still not even right. I'm not doing anything I should be doing right now.
Yeah.
Why not? Right? But the difference was those two restaurants were in Harlem, a few blocks from where I lived. I started really falling in love with Harlem. So I moved, by that time when I made my career in hospitality, I was able to afford my own place then. So I lived in Harlem on 113th and Frederick Douglass. The best possible. Like
Amazing.
I think about that little studio apartment all the time. And so I was living on my own. It's different when you're living on your own versus you have roommates or whatever.
100%.
So yes, I said yes to that. And I went in when they still had floors to put in. So I was really behind the scenes and I was learning and just soaking everything, right? Soaking up everything. And I became the manager behind the scenes. At that time, I was the office or operations manager. So I was always in the basement somewhere. But I love getting dressed up to work because I could walk to work and I always wore a head wrap. And I used to get my head wraps. They were just scraps of fabrics. I would just place on my head and like wrap them. And people started asking, they were like, where's the tall lady who works with the head wrap? And I would walk from work home because I lived in the neighborhood and I would be stopped all the time. And that's when it clicked. I realized that I was wrapping my hair with scraps or random scarves that I found by being creative. And I was walking into rooms that back then head wraps were not very popular. Like if you wore them, it was probably because of, religious or cultural reasons, not because you wanted to express yourself in this
right. In this bold, colorful way.
Right. And people were asking me all the time, why are you wearing head wraps? Is it a political thing? So I just remembered it being this thing that a lot of younger Black women that I crossed were interested in, but didn't think were maybe appropriate because even now we're still dealing with the hair. What is that? Hair Care Act that we're still trying to pass because Black women's hair has been politicized from the very beginning, right? And in America. So it's kind of like... Can you
explain that for people who don't know what the Black Hair Act is? Really quickly.
Honestly, I think it's one of those things that people should just look into. And when Black women talk about hair, it's always this very heavy topic because even now some kids can't go to school because they choose to wear their hair in its natural state, or they've locked up their hair, or they braided their hair. And all of these different styles are styles that are natural to Afro hair in order to take care of it, right? So the Hair Care Act means you cannot discriminate against women who choose to wear their hair and
fully natural.
Right.
Yeah.
And they could walk into a room anywhere that is and wear an afro or braids or locks and be okay because that is how their hair is, right? So the head wrap to me is an extension of that. It is something where I think in general, when it comes to Black women fitting into spaces, it's always been this very layered and complex topic. And I think even now as a successful Black woman, I think about, I meet so many people around the world, right? And sometimes even with the song, I'm Black and I'm Proud, why do people say that? It is because they have to say it. It is because they need to say it in order to feel like they can show up in a room, because if they are not proud and if they are not walking in with their shoulders up and their chins up, then they will feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders because they've always felt that way, like they're not good enough to be there. So, but when you say that, you can walk in and you could say, well, I'm here. It's not about being superior. It's about being enough. It's about feel like you can just sit here as we are and being okay, right?
See you next time at the Brave Table.